I love Superman. He's number 3 on my Rushmore of superheroes, and he's the original from which all my other favorites derive. He's the world's most recognizable superhero, and yet also the most divisive. Who he is such a specific thing to a lot of people. Most people say Christopher Reeve is the perfect Superman, while others would say that it's Henry Cavill, myself included. But to give Mr. Reeves his flowers, his performance was indeed excellent. This moment where he changes identity with just a subtle shift in posture was, in a word, masterful. But I never liked any of his movies. The first had some charm and good effects for their time, but that's about it. The second, however, was just straight silliness.
Prepare to be destroyed, Superman. What was that?
Yeah, take that, you jerk.
That was a minor inconvenience.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. Slowed you down.
I'll say.
And the others, if you can believe it, out-sillied that. The Superman I grew up with was always a bit corny, but not silly. From the Superman animated series to the old Fleischer cartoons from the 40s, to me Superman was the Boy Scout who'd rescue a cat in the morning and beat up a giant robot T-Rex in the afternoon. And I guess that's what the Reeves movies lacked. Action, or at least the kind of action I'd call super. But when I saw Man of Steel in theaters for the first time, I walked out of it convinced I'd just seen the greatest live-action Superman movie ever made. The gravitas, the characters, the moral quandaries, the feels, the music. God bless you, Hans Zimmer. And of course, the fights. So good. I finally got the awesome, inspiring Superman movie I always wanted, but then I made the mistake of going to the internet. When I joined the Man of Steel discourse to talk to all the fans about the movie and all its awesomeness, I was met with, "Don't like it. Not my Superman. It's too dark and gritty." And the reason for this video, how could Superman allow so much collateral damage during his battles with Zod and the other Kryptonians? And you know what? It's kind of a valid question. But let's take it even further. Why do Superman stories need fight scenes at all?
Because it's so much fun, Chan. Get it?
But theoretically, he, being the strongest thing on the planet, should be able to end every conflict in seconds. It's the David and Goliath story if Goliath was the hero. So when every battle with humans can end like... and every fight with robots begin and end like...
Did I miss anything?
the avenues for a riveting battle can seem kind of hard to find. Sure, you could throw god-tier problems at him like Darkseid, Doomsday, or 1,000 nuclear missiles, but you can't make the sky fall every day without diminishing its gravitas, and thus we've arrived at a paradox of sorts. A Superman fight paradox, if you will. What is the Superman fight paradox, you might ask? Well, to put it simply, it's the idea that a great Superman fight scene cannot exist. Superman is the ultimate why wouldn't they just do this character. When the fans get a nice long fight, they say, well, why wouldn't Superman just end the fight immediately? But then when he does just that, they say, oh, the fight was too short, that was boring. The fans that complained about all the destruction caused when Superman fought Zod also love the famous World of Cardboard speech.
Like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something, to break someone. Never allowing myself to lose control, even for a moment, or someone could die.
When Big Blue gave Darkseid the business. Maybe there's something about animation that makes people think those buildings were empty. They'll make up every excuse in the book on why scenes like this are totally different, but
They're the same picture.
to tell you the truth, I think it's just a matter of color correction. People awed, laughed, and cheered when Hulk and Thor smashed while buildings crashed. But when Soups gave Zod the snap, the fans did not clap. However, when he killed Zod on Superman 2, they ate it up like Thanksgiving dinner. Which proves my point. Color palette is everything. Or maybe it's just a coincidence. The best Superman stories are, for the most part, tales of morality. How a person with absolute power keeps himself from being absolutely corrupted. Because when you can do almost anything, the lines begin to blur between what's right and what's easy. But if I think about all the great Superman comics I've read, I seldom remember the action sequences. Sure, I can recall a panel or two. The Superman fighting Captain Marvel 2-page spread from Kingdom Come, or the double knockout from Death of Superman come to mind. But if you ask me what my favorite fights were in the comics, I honestly couldn't tell you. I simply remember the stories. Secret Identity, a what if Superman was in the real world story. Red Sun, a scenario where they combine Superman's innate goodness with a Soviet-Russian upbringing. Birthright, in my opinion the best Superman origin story ever done. For All Seasons, a 4-issue account of Soup's exploits from the perspective of his family, friends, and enemies. The Sound of One Hand Clapping, Superman's first run-in with the Joker. American Alien, which is another great coming-of-age story, and the first volume of Grounded, a story arc that has Big Blue reconnecting with the people of America in a countrywide stroll. The action in these stories never really stood out for me. Not because the action sequences weren't great. They are. The characters and themes just rang so much louder. My all-time favorite Superman story is just Superman talking a woman off a ledge. No action, no spectacle. Just a person gently trying to convince another person to imagine a light at the end of a seemingly endless tunnel of despair. For all his amazing feats, his ability to give hope and inspire people to be the best of themselves is what makes him Superman. And as cathartic as it is to watch Superman flex on the Greek god Apollo, a simple conversation about ethics and Henry Thoreau hits on such a deeper level. But something changes when you add motion to a picture. Expectations. In 2006, we got Bryan Singer's Superman Returns, a spiritual sequel to Richard Donner's Superman 1 and 2. It got decent reviews, but the general consensus was that it was kind of boring. Clark Kent/Superman had very little to say, literally. And despite one amazing action sequence involving a plane in the second act of the movie, the rest was very forgettable. I remember Kevin Smith saying something to the effect of,
Superman doesn't throw a single punch. Like, you're gonna sit there, you remember the first movie where you believe a man can fly? This movie's gonna be, you won't believe how fucking boring this man is.
90% of the film's action involved things being caught and lowered slowly to the ground, which kind of made sense given that the villain was Lex Luthor, and no, not mech suit Lex Luthor, but Armani suit Lex Luthor, which could still have actually worked had Lex used his intellect to force the Man of Steel into a game of wits, the classic brains against bronze motif. But instead, they decided to go with the Superman versus evil real estate plot. Again.
So exciting.
That being said, a Superman movie comes with a lot more expectations than that of a comic book. You can't simply do a 2-hour conversation between Superman and the Joker, or a 2-hour debate about morality with Lex Luthor. The man has superpowers, and we want to see him use them. But despite being the most recognizable superhero in the world, most people have never read a Superman comic, or watched the animated stuff. So what they're most familiar with is stuff like the Christopher Reeves movie, the Dean Cain show, and of course, Smallville. So I can actually imagine the whiplash when the average fan went from this to this. Maybe it was too much power, too much destruction, too early. But then came another problem. In my experience, There are two kinds of fights that work best for Supes. The first I'd categorize as the God Flex. In 2012, DC Animation gave us Superman vs. the Elite, or as I like to call it, the best Superman movie, period. Yes, it's better than All-Star, it is not up for discussion, and if you haven't seen it, rectify your situation as soon as possible. In the film, Superman is forced to grapple with the question, why doesn't he just be judge, jury, and executioner to the worst of the worst, even when it's what the people demand? There's this final battle where Superman fights a group of young, passionate, superpowered people who believe they have the right to put the bad guys down permanently. If they try to kill our blue Boy Scout and succeed, or so they think, the whole ordeal turns into a bit of a horror show as Superman reminds them why you never want to see a day where he doesn't hold back.
Bonnie, get ready to port again. The second he shows his ass, I'm gonna flatten this whole city.
Chester, wait!
Holy shit. Where did he go? Where did he freaking go?
Orbit. He went into orbit at Mach 7. If you had super hearing, any second you'd hear the pop.
Do it again.
Pop.
Don't get it twisted, Superman is daddy, and he will put the kids to bed. And despite all that pesky destruction, this scene is seen as the gold standard by all fans, including me. The other type of fight would be the 3 spinning plates. Question: how do you make an exciting action scene for a guy that has all the powers? Answer: you give him all the problems at once. While he can certainly do a lot, he can't be everywhere at once. And if you've seen The Boys, you know how fragile normal people can be. So creating scenarios where he has to be strong, fast, and gentle simultaneously are key. Take the Smallville fight, for example. He not only has to fight 2 fellow Kryptonians that are better trained at fighting than he is, but also earn the trust of the military that is currently trying to kill him by protecting them and other innocent civilians. This whole sequence is A1 in my humble opinion.
That is the illest shit I've ever seen in my life.
But the fans said otherwise. Apparently all that destruction was a deal breaker despite the unfair 2v1 matchup, all the saving he managed to do at the same time, and the very important fact that this was indeed his first official day on the job. Every fan seems to have a different Goldilocks zone with the live-action adaptations. They want high stakes, but not really. They want logical fights, but not really. Clark. They want Superman to make hard choices. But not really. He's not supposed to kill, except for when he does. They want Dragon Ball Z levels of spectacle, but without the human cost.
What do you want? What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
One of the things I find most paradoxically satisfying is the fact that, for the most part, everyone seems to be taking notes from good old Zacky Poo over here. This man defined the modern action language of Superman. The way he catches a collapsing oil rig, the way he holds ground when someone pushes him, the way he puts one hand out to steer when flying. Heck, this Man of Steel shot alone has been copied in Supergirl, Justice League War, Invincible, and the Injustice 2 video game. They've even implemented some things in the CW show. And while the show Superman and Lois does have a lighter tone, it actually feels very Snyder-like. By the way, shout out to Tyler Hoechlin, who's been absolutely killing it as Superman. In my opinion, he easily takes the top spot for the best live-action Superman on television. And no shade to Dean and Tom, I love you guys too. But to hammer the point plainly, nobody seems to have a better idea despite all the complaints. Maybe we'll get something groundbreaking in Superman Legacy. Now, I'm not sure what James Gunn's got in store for us, but I'm hoping he can hit that oh-so-tiny Goldilocks zone. if for no other reason than to satiate my need to share in all my joy of something with my fellow fans. And all the teasing aside, I actually do love all the mostly healthy disagreements. They're proof that we all love the same lovable but corny Kryptonian from Kansas. It's just been a while since we've all joined hands and said, "That's the one." So to all the Superman and super creatives that came before, I say thank you. And to you, Mr. Gunn, I say,
good luck.